How can Articulate continuously evaluate an architecture rather than simply store it? That's the question for this episode. Hello, I'm Russell, and welcome to episode 15 of the Articulate Journal, where I'm exploring what it takes to build an AI native architecture from first principles. In the previous episode, I explored how architectural knowledge evolves. New information simply doesn't overwrite what Articulate already knows. It enters as proposed knowledge. It's interpreted, reconciled, and assessed before it can become part of the authoritative knowledge model. That gives us a way of deciding what we currently believe to be true about the architecture. But there's another problem. Just because something is true doesn't mean it's good architecture. Knowing what an architecture looks like is very different from evaluating what the architecture means. Imagine Articulate knows that a reporting service reads directly from the order database. That might be completely correct. We have evidence for it. We're confident it's happening and it belongs in the architectural model. But suppose we have an architectural principle saying that a service should have exclusive ownership of its persistence. Now we have two pieces of architectural knowledge. The reporting service reads from the order database, and the order service should exclusively own that database. Neither statement explicitly says there's a problem. The concern only appears when we evaluate them together. The architecture may work, the knowledge may be correct, but there's potentially an architectural issue, and that's a very different kind of problem. This is much closer to what architects actually do. We're rarely just looking for information, we're constantly evaluating it. This design conflicts with one of our other principles. Does the proposal undermine a previous decision? Does this improve reliability but make the system harder to operate? And do we accept that trade-off? Are we introducing a new dependency on something that we're trying to retire? Is there something important missing? We've taken what we know and we're asking what it means in the context of the wider architecture. And this takes me back to something I said when I first introduced the knowledge model. Knowledge is information combined with thinking. Up until now, I've spent a lot of time establishing the information side of that statement. Architectural assurance starts to make thinking executable. Consider another example. Suppose we're proposing a new loyalty service. As part of the design, that service depends on an existing CRM platform. If we look at the current architecture, there may be absolutely nothing wrong with that. The CRM exists, it's operational, other systems already depend upon it. The relationship is perfectly valid. But elsewhere in a knowledge model, we have an accepted architectural decision. The CRM is going to be retired. Again, none of the individual pieces of knowledge explicitly say this proposal introduces an architectural risk. We have to connect them. The loyalty service introduces a new dependency on the CRM, and that CRM is scheduled for retirement. Therefore, this proposal increases our dependency on something we're deliberately trying to remove. That conclusion wasn't stored in a knowledge model, it was derived from it. This also reinforces something from the previous episode. Understanding the baseline architecture matters. Architecture isn't only about what exists today. We need to understand what once existed, what exists now, and what we're intending to build. A proposal can therefore be completely valid against today's architecture, while moving us in exactly the wrong direction. That's something a simple validation rule can easily miss. The question isn't, is this relationship valid? It's also, does this relationship make sense given where the architecture is trying to go? That's architectural assessment. This is the responsibility that I'm calling architectural insurance. Architectural insurance evaluates architectural knowledge and proposed change against the wider architectural context. That can happen at several levels. Some concerns are structural. A service depends on something that no longer exists. A component has no owner, or a business capability has no supporting application. Some concerns relate to principles. The design works but appears to conflict with an architectural principle. And some concerns are about trade-offs. A proposed change may improve resilience but increase operational complexity. It might improve availability while also increasing costs. Architecture isn't about maximising every characteristic. It's about understanding the consequences of the choices that we're making. Architectural assurance should help us make those consequences visible. There's another important distinction here. Not every insurance check needs to go through a large language model. If a component depends on a system that doesn't exist, we can determine that reliably. If a service accesses a database owned by another service, the knowledge model may already contain enough structured information to identify that relationship. If a proposal introduces a dependency on a system scheduled for retirement, we may be able to discover that through structured queries and relationships. We shouldn't ask an LLM to rediscover something the system can establish deterministically. But identifying the relationship and deciding what that relationship means are different problems. Does the principle genuinely apply here, and is the violation justified? Is this an acceptable transitional architecture? Does the improvement in resilience justify the additional operational complexity? Do we have enough evidence to make that judgment? That's where contextual reasoning becomes useful. So the architecture needs both. Deterministic mechanisms establish what we can identify reliably, and contextual reasoning helps interpret why it matters. And this doesn't have to begin once we've written software. Earlier in the journal, I introduced DCL as a way of describing capability intent independently of implementation. If that intent is structured, we can evaluate it as well. A capability might define what happens when something succeeds, but say nothing about insufficient evidence. Two rules might contradict each other. An effect might modify authoritative knowledge without defining an approval policy. A capability might consume an event that nobody produces. Those are architectural concerns we can identify before we've chosen a framework or created a service or written a prompt. So architectural assurance isn't about evaluating implemented architecture. It can also evaluate architectural intent, and finding those problems before implementation is considerably cheaper than discovering them afterwards. But there's an important boundary here. Architectural assurance produces findings. It does not produce unquestionable truth. Suppose Articulate says, this proposal appears to conflict with the principle that services exclusively own their own persistence. That finding might be correct, but there may be an approved exception. The relationship might have been classified indirectly. The principle might not apply in this particular context, or the architecture might deliberately accept that trade-off. The role of architectural assurance is not to make that decision. It's to make that decision visible. A finding might lead to more discovery. It might lead to a revised design. It might result in an exception. And it might trigger a new architectural decision. And eventually, it might result in architectural knowledge. But reasoning shouldn't silently refine architectural truth. Human architects still need to provide judgment and accountability. This creates the possibility of something I've wanted Articulate to support from the beginning. Continuous architectural assessment. As new knowledge enters the system, we can evaluate what it implies. As proposals are created, we can assess them against what we already know. As decisions change, we can understand what those changes affect. As capabilities are defined, we can identify gaps before implementation begins. Architecture starts becoming something the system can actively reason about rather than something we periodically document and review. But there's a danger here as well. If every change produces dozens of warnings, no one will pay attention to them. Architectural assurance shouldn't become another governance gate that teams learn to work around. The objective isn't to find as many problems as possible, it's to service the concerns that materially affect architectural outcomes. Assurance should support judgment, not replace it, and definitely not overwhelm it. We've spent 15 episodes working through the conceptual architecture behind Articulate. We've defined the knowledge model. We've explored how agents can retrieve and reason over architectural knowledge. We've used DCL to describe capability intent. We've established the requirements for an AI native runtime. We've explored memory and durable execution. We've selected that runtime and we've established how architectural knowledge safely evolves. And now we've added architectural assurance, a way of evaluating what knowledge implies. But so far, all of this is still architecture. Models, capabilities, decisions and principles. Ideas about how architectural intelligence should work. Eventually, architecture has to confront implementation. So the question for the next episode is a simple one. Does this architecture actually work when we build it? See you on the next one.